Welcome back to the Canon 70D beginner series, and in the last video we set the camera up for video. Now today we are doing the same thing for photography. Make sure you format your card in camera before a new shoot and whenever you use a new card in this camera. This helps ensure maximum compatibility and reduces the risk of card errors. First thing, we want to go into the menu and set the image quality. You have two main formats, or you have two formats basically to choose from, and that is JPEG and RAW. When you shoot JPEG, the camera takes the raw data from the sensor and automatically applies its own processing. It's small and it's immediately shareable. Now, the downside is that all that in-camera processing is baked in permanently. So it reduces your ability to edit. RAW is completely different because a RAW file is essentially the unprocessed data directly from the sensor. It needs to be processed on a computer using software. So if you're thinking of editing your photos in post, then make sure you select RAW. If you really just want to have photos that are readily shareable, then use JPEG. Disable the beep when you're shooting in quiet environments like churches, meetings, or events where camera sounds may be distracting. You want to set the shutter release without cut to off. This prevents the camera from taking photos without an SD card inserted. This helps you avoid accidentally taking photos without actually recording any images. Adjust your image review to either off, 2, 4, or 8 seconds, or to hold, depending on how long you want your image to be seen on the screen after you take the photo. When it's off, you don't get any preview, and when it's on hold, the preview stays on the screen until you operate the camera. In shooting tab 3, I suggest that you set your auto ISO shooting range from 100 to a maximum of 3200. Doing this makes sure that if you ever set your camera to auto ISO, it doesn't exceed 3200, because if it does, then you're going to get a lot of noise in your image. Next, we're going to be looking at white balance. White balance is the process through which you set your camera to render colors accurately in your lighting conditions. You're telling the camera what white looks like in your lighting environment so that all the other colors are accurate. I've often said auto white balance works pretty well in most situations, but you may want to avoid it if you are in a controlled environment where the light isn't really changing. In this case, you just pick the preset that matches your light. So something like daylight or shade or cloudy, tungsten, fluorescent, all those presets that you get. But for maximum accuracy, you want to shoot a gray card under your light conditions. And this is a special card that is gray. You can actually purchase one online, and this is a more accurate way of setting your white balance. And you shoot, and then you set a custom white balance using the image that you have shot. If you're shooting a RAW, white balance is something that you can adjust non-destructively in post. But what I would recommend is always try and get everything right in camera, because it reduces the amount of work you have to do in post to correct mistakes. The next thing we'll just go over quickly is your color space. Color space is found in tab 3, and you have two options. I would say just stick with sRGB. If your images are going to be viewed on a phone or a computer or social media or printed at a standard photo lab, then sRGB is the correct choice. Next, we want to look at picture styles. This is something you can set by going to tab 4 and select picture style. This determines how the camera processes and renders your JPEG. For general photography, standard is a good all-round starting point. If you want to shoot flat and grade your images in post, then choose neutral or faithful and reduce the contrast, reduce the saturation, and this gives you more latitude in editing. You can always add back the contrast and saturation in post. Disable the touch shutter if you just want to use the screen to select focus points. When it's on, the camera selects focus points and takes a photo whenever you touch the screen. I personally turn this off because I find myself touching the screen accidentally and then end up taking photos that I don't mean to take. Next, you want to choose your preferred aspect ratio for your photos. The default is 3:2 and that matches the sensor size. The other options are 4:3. This is a common size for displays and for prints. And then you also have 16:9, and this is good for photos that you're going to be taking to use in videos in that 16:9 aspect ratio. And then you have 1:1, which are good for social media. If you're shooting RAW, the aspect ratio choice is there to show you the crop guides. Because the whole sensor is recorded, you have the whole sensor to work with in post-production. Next, we want to look at setting our autofocus. First, we want to look at the focus mode. Are you shooting one shot versus AI servo? So press the AF button on the top of the camera and rotate the main dial to switch between the focus modes. One shot AF locks focus when you have pressed the shutter button and holds it there until you fully press to take the shot. It's precise and reliable for stationary subjects, portraits, landscapes, architecture, product photography, that kind of thing. Anytime your subject isn't moving, one shot is the right choice. AI servo, on the other hand, continuously tracks a moving subject as long as you hold the shutter half pressed. The focus never locks. It keeps adjusting as the subject moves towards you or away from you. This is your mode for sports photography, children running, wildlife, pets, anything in motion. AI servo combined with fast continuous drive mode is how you capture sharp images of moving subject consistently. So we're going to look at the drive modes in just a minute. AI focus is a hybrid that starts in one shot and automatically switches to AI servo if it detects movement. Next, we want to look at AF point selection, where to focus. Press the AF area selection button. It's in the upper right hand corner at the back of the camera. That's AF selection, and cycle through your AF area modes. Single point gives you one specific AF point that you move manually using the multi-controller on the joystick. This is the most precise option for portraits. Zone AF, on the other hand, divides your frame into 9 zones. The camera selects the best focus point within whichever zone you choose. A good middle ground for subjects that move in a predictable area of the frame. Next is your 19-point automatic selection, and that lets your camera choose from all 19 AF points automatically, and is fast and convenient for unpredictable subjects. But the camera will sometimes focus on the wrong thing, particularly if there's a cluttered background. Next, we want to look at the parameters that you use to adjust exposure. And these are aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. These three make up what we call the exposure triangle. And that's what you use to make your image brighter or darker. Aperture and shutter speed also have other functions besides affecting exposure. So you turn the mode dial on the top. First, we have aperture priority, or AV. And this is where most photographers live day to day, and for good reason. You set the aperture and the camera handles shutter speed. You are controlling your depth of field, how blurry your background is, while the camera keeps the exposure correct. Next is our shutter priority, or TV, and this is the tool for freezing or blurring motion. So sports, wildlife, waterfalls, light trails, anytime the relationship between your subject and the motion is the primary creative concern, then shutter priority is the place to be. Next, we look at program, and program is a useful everyday mode that lets the camera handle aperture and shutter while you control everything else. So this is good for documentary or street situations where you need to react quickly when you are shooting. Manual, on the other hand, is where you go when you need full control. So if you're doing studio work, tripod shooting, situations with a tricky or mixed lighting that confuses the meter, or anytime you need completely consistent exposure across a series of photos, then the manual mode is where you want to go. Next, we want to press the menu button and go to tab 3 and select our ISO speed. ISO controls your camera sensor's sensitivity to light. So lower ISO means less sensitivity, but it also means cleaner images. High ISO means more sensitivity in low light situations, but it introduces digital noise, that grainy texture you see in dark photos. So ISO 100 to 400, you're going to get clean, beautiful images and beautiful image quality. Use this whenever lighting allows. So set your ISO as low as possible. You can push it up to the 400 to 1600 and still you get good images. You get slight noise in dark areas, but nothing that will ruin your image. So perfectly usable for indoor available light, overcast outdoor shooting, or twilight. When you're reaching the 1600 to 3200, you're starting to get noise, particularly in the shadows or dark areas. 3200 to 6400, you're now getting a lot of noise. Also in this menu, you find the auto ISO. When enabled, the camera automatically selects the ISO within a range that you define. So you can define it in that menu. So you can set the minimum to 100 and the maximum to maybe 1600 or 3200, depending on how much noise you are comfortable with. Next, metering modes. By definition, metering is how the camera measures the light in the scene to calculate a correct exposure. So you press the metering mode button, the button above the main dial on the top of the camera, and rotate the dial to switch between modes, and you can see the modes on the top LCD or on your LCD screen. First, there is evaluative metering, and this is the default and the one you'll use the vast majority of the time. It divides the entire frame into zones and analyzes the light across all of them, sort of weighing the reading toward the active autofocus point. Leave it here as your standard setting. Center weighted average is another one, and that takes its reading primarily from the center of the frame and averages it out across the whole image. It's a more traditional metering pattern that some photographers prefer for portraits where the subject is centered. Partial metering takes its reading from approximately 9% of the frame in the center of your image. And this is useful for backlit subjects where you want to expose for the face rather than the bright background behind it. And then you have spot metering, and this is the most precise. It reads from only about 2% of the frame right in the center. This lets you take a very precise reading from one specific small area in your frame, regardless of everything else in the scene. This is used mainly by experienced photographers in extreme lighting situations. This could be a performer on a bright stage, or a subject against a white sky, or any scene where the light distribution is dramatic and complex. Next, we want to look at our drive mode. Press the drive mode button and rotate the main dial to select your drive mode. So let's look at the different drive modes. Single shot. The camera takes one photo per full press of the shutter. This is the default for most photography. Next is your high-speed continuous. The camera fires up to 7 frames per second for this camera for as long as you hold the shutter down. This is your mode for sports, for wildlife, fast-moving subjects, children. And then you have low speed continuous. It's similar to the first one, but fires at a slower continuous rate. Our next drive mode is our self timer, 10 seconds. It fires 10 seconds after you press the shutter and is used for tripod shots where you want to press the shutter and get into the frame or to avoid camera shake on long exposures. You also have the 2-second self timer. This one fires 2 seconds after pressing, and the most practical self timer setting for avoiding camera shake on a tripod. And so that's it for today. That's how you set up your initial settings for photography on the Canon 70D. If you found this useful, then go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, share this video, and also hit the notification bell as usual so that you get notified of new videos. We're going to continue with this series and cover more aspects in detail on the Canon 70D. See you on the next one.